What's up everybody, welcome back to the channel. Before we go any further, please make sure to like the video, comment, subscribe and share it far and wide. Please also make sure to go out and check our latest MMA production. It's called Ntando Zondi, the Zulu Warrior. Link is in the description. I'll put something up right about here. You guys please go check it out. I'd really appreciate that. Quite a bit of news today, including obviously being the fight week for UFC 309, a lot of UFC 309 news. But particularly for today, it's going to be as pertains to Jon Jones, talking about future plans, possibly fighting Alex Pereira, Tom Aspinall. Bareknuckle's going to lay out his path towards the title. Then we've got Mokaev. Remember him? He's apparently ducking a local fight over here. And then on the local scene, we've got a retirement of an absolute South African MMA legend and an IMMAF world champion. So let's get into the news together. Oh, just by the way, guys, I will be live streaming UFC 309 this weekend. Have a look for it on YouTube and Twitch, as well as TikTok and Instagram. And I'll be doing the prediction show later this week to let you know my thoughts on who's going to win at UFC 309. So stay tuned for all of that. It will be on all of my socials. So the first little bit of news we've got here, this is on X, I'll link it in the description. Jon Jones clarifies that the heavyweight title would not necessarily have to be at stake if he were to fight Alex Pereira, and he has another belt in mind. Let's go take a listen to what Jon Jones says in this little snippet. Full interview's coming out soon. Let's go have a listen first at the questions and then what my thoughts are.
I get where you're coming from, and I think that if anybody has the choice between Jon Jones retiring or Jon Jones fighting Alex Pereira, I think everybody's taking the latter choice. The big question, I think, in people's minds are, does the heavyweight title have to be on the line here? Because the heavyweight title, I think, with an interim champion, that's what people are kind of hung up on, is the unification of that title. Would you, say, relinquish the title and then fight Alex Pereira at just a heavyweight feature fight, or go back down to light heavyweight? What's your mindset on the interim championship being kind of a hang-up?
Okay, so the interim championship is a massive hang-up. I had no idea why they made an interim championship if they were never going to make the two fight, that being Jon Jones and Tom Aspinall. It's been a question I've had forever, because what is the point, honestly? That being said, I would have preferred Jon Jones to either relinquish the title and then come back later, or they just unify the title and not wait for the Stipe fight. I've made my thoughts on that clear, abundantly clear. But they asked Jon Jones now about what he would do interim title-wise. Again, Tom Aspinall, not asking him directly, which I would have liked to see. Not asking him about Tom Aspinall directly, I guess. Maybe that isn't the full interview. As the guy said, interview is going to be coming out soon. But let's hear what he has to say about the interim title and then about fighting Alex Pereira.
Well, the interim championship shouldn't have been there in the first place. The only reason why there was an interim championship fight was because I got hurt and they needed to keep the importance of that Madison Square Garden event. But Sergey and Asma shouldn't have been fighting for an interim title in the first place.
So I agree with that. If you're going down that route of it not being a title, if you're going to wait for Jon Jones, not being an interim title, if you're going to wait for Jon Jones, then there's no point in having an interim title. I don't see the benefit of having it, particularly, and again in hindsight, it proved to be true that they're never going to unify this belt, and that's the way it seems to be. So I 100% agree with Jon Jones there, but given the amount of time that Jon Jones has actually been out and was scheduled to be out, an interim title made sense. But then you could upgrade it to the title proper. You might lose some prestige because they didn't beat Jon Jones. But it's just been a mess. You see, there's so many different ways this could have gone. It's just been an absolute mess. But yeah, let's hear what the reasons why he says it shouldn't be there.
They should have just been a replacement fight, just a main event fight. I don't think that.
Fair enough.
I think making it an interim fight was premature. And now you have a bunch of confused people. When you have a dominant.
Honestly, I'm still confused by this whole situation, because it's clear that we're going to wait for Jon Jones. So if you're going to wait for Jon Jones, why make an interim title? Anyway, let's hear the rest of it.
A champion that's been around as long as I have, there was no reason to put an interim championship belt out there. So that's the repercussion of Madison Square Garden last year.
So basically, to keep interest for Madison Square Garden, they made it an interim title, which, fair enough, I can understand that, that point of view that he's got. But honestly, it just, the way this whole thing was handled was just ridiculous. But be that as it may, you have decided that there's an interim champion. There is a heavyweight champion. John Jones stays the heavyweight champion. Tom Aspinall is the interim champion. Why not just make them unify the belts? Like Stipe could wait another couple of months, if they really want to make that fight. But it's just a mess. It's just a complete, utter mess. And now, people are starting to claim that the greatest fighter of all time is ducking Tom Aspinall, the young up-and-coming fighter. And it's easy to believe that because they don't want to have this fight be made. But honestly, they just screwed up. But now that they're in this position, what do they do next? And what's next for John Jones? Let's have a listen to what John Jones has to say about it.
Would you care if a title was on the line against Alex Pereira? You'd be happy with it being a feature fight?
It'd be cool to fight over the heavyweight championship, but I would also willingly give up the heavyweight championship.
So after all of that, he's going to give up the heavyweight championship. But he didn't willingly give up the heavyweight championship when he was injured. Interesting, Mr. Jones.
I walked away from the light heavyweight championship and
to pursue the heavyweight championship. You didn't walk away to do nothing, but anyway.
And I'd love to walk away from this one as well, on top, on his own terms, good head and shoulder, making lots of money. I love the position that I'm in right now.
That is true. He's in an amazing position right now. I mean, there's a potential Aspinall fight. He's about to fight Stipe, make a ton of money. He's talking about Alex Pereira. He's in an amazing position. I mean, he's got one fight left, maybe after this, if he even fights again. So, yeah, he's in an amazing position. There's a Francis Ngannou dream matchup as well. I mean, John Jones is in the pound seat right now.
Fighting Pereira for the Banff belt, that'd be
the Banff belt. The Banff, what is the Banff belt? The BMF belt. That stupid gimmick. That stupid gimmick belt. Anyway.
Cool. We both have 2 belts in 2 weight classes. And the night we fought, we'd be both fighting for our 3rd belt, which would be the Banff. How cool would that be? You heard it here first. I haven't had this conversation with any other reporter.
You heard it here first. Okay. First of all, the Banff belt. What the hell? Anyway. Okay, you guys know how I feel about the BMF belt. I think it's stupid. I think it's a gimmick. I think it makes no sense because it doesn't get defended. It just gets introduced right here. There's talk of a BMF tournament, and what's going to happen to that if this goes through. But to be honest with you, I think if you're going to have a BMF, the baddest motherfucker, it may as well be heavyweights, because the heavyweight champion's always been the baddest man on the planet. So this kind of would make sense, I guess, because they are probably the 2 baddest dudes in the UFC right now. 2 of the baddest, at least. So, I mean, the run that Alex Pereira has been on this year has just been nothing short of crazy. Definitely probably going to be the fighter of the year just because of that. I mean, the amount of events that he's saved. John Jones, his legacy, he's a big heavyweight now, still the same skilled fighter. It might make sense, but then, they're calling it their 3rd belt and stuff, but I think you can only call it a 3rd belt if it actually gets defended. So maybe because Alex Pereira fights so often, maybe he does defend his BMF belt, his Banff belt. But interesting. I would actually like to see that fight, Pereira and Jones. Obviously, everybody would like to see Aspinall Jones. But if you're John Jones, you hold all the cards. You have so many different options. You could walk away from the UFC and go get that Saudi money. One last time, fight Francis Ngannou in Saudi Riyadh season. I'm still saying, somehow, you can get it done. I don't think that's too far out of the realms of possibility, but interesting. I do kind of agree if you're going to go with the route of having John Jones stay champion, you're going to wait for John Jones. No point in having an interim belt. It just confuses everybody. It confuses Tom Aspinall. It confuses the fans. It confuses everybody. People start to say that he's ducking people. I mean, even here, now that there is an interim belt, why is he blatantly ignoring Aspinall? Jones called himself a long-reigning champion, but that was a light heavyweight, and Aspinall's accomplished more at heavyweight. Those kinds of thoughts start to pop in, and there's some truth to that. I mean, why are you not calling out Aspinall? Why are you ignoring him? I get you're at the end of your career, you want to make as much money as possible, but Aspinall would make a ton of money for you. So I don't know. Doesn't look like he's fighting Aspinall. Seems to be ignoring him. So yeah, guys, I think just enjoy John Jones while he's around, and don't give him too much shit for not fighting Aspinall. Next bit of news, we got good old Nickal talking about a title shot yet again. I mean, again, Brendan Schaub and Eddie Bravo and Joe Rogan were trying to insert him into this title picture at middleweight. I think he's a long, long way off. And even though they've strapped a rocket to his back so far, he's still nowhere near the title picture, in my opinion, anyway. But let's hear what Nickal has to say. This is on the Ariel Helwani show, talking about his pathway to the belt.
There's usually a moment where it's like a shift, like you get a big win and then the rocket is strapped to you. A win at MSG, is that the moment?
That's true. If you look at, take the current UFC middleweight champion, for example, take Dricus, his win against Robert Whittaker strapped him up, even though it was a number one contendership fight. But that had because people were still doubting him even after he beat, he went through number 15, number 10, number 5, and then number 1 ranked. People still doubting him till he beat Robert Whittaker. So that is very, very true. Now, what is Nickal's victory?
Moment for you, or when do we start to see you in these really, really high profile fights, main events, etc.?
Yeah, that's a good question. I feel that already. I feel like the rocket's been strapped to me since after my first pro fight. I'm trying to even think of the date.
That's very true, because again, I remember it was UFC 290. I can't remember, but Dricus was on a 4-fight win streak, and he got bumped off the main card for Nickal's second UFC fight ever, for him to be bumped up onto the main card. So that rocket has been strapped.
What was that? Maybe 2.5 years ago, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And so I feel like the rocket's been strapped to me for a while. But if you look at anybody else's career, they're fighting over a decade before they're in that position. And I think I'll be in there.
Depends where you start your career. But, if you're talking UFC career, no. 2.5 years within the UFC, people are already fighting for belts. But getting to the UFC and then fighting, okay, then I guess that is true.
Probably around year. I'm basically there. I win 1 or 2 more fights and I'm fighting a ranked guy, and then I'm fighting a top 5, and then I'm fighting for the belt. So I'm already, if I have 6 fights right now, I'm already past the halfway point, if that's the trajectory.
There's usually
Okay, so he's talking about 12 fights. That, fair enough, that could work. But he's talking about 1 fight against a ranked guy after this, then a top 5, then a title. It's possible. It's very, very possible. Like you said, he's 6-0. He's now fighting Paul Craig next. Paul Craig himself has only really recently sort of lost to ranked opponents. As far back as Volkan Ozdemir, Johnny Walker, now more recently a middleweight, Brendan Allen and Charles Barello. He's not ranked anymore at middleweight. If you see over here, he's out of the top 15 after his losses. So, the trajectory that Nickal's talking about is not too far off, honestly. If you look at the way that Paul Craig has lost to the ranked opponents and people that were sort of touted as the next kind of challengers at a time, Karen Allen, Brendan the Karen Allen, was supposed to be there, Charles Barello, they've all finished him. So at a bare minimum, Nickal needs to finish Paul Craig, and then he can have a chance at possibly a ranked opponent, like he says. And then from there, if he finishes him and keeps beating these people that easily and that well, maybe fight someone like a Charles Barello. Again, if you look at the rankings, if he fights anybody sort of over there, I don't know if they'll give him Paulo Costa. Shara Bullet, maybe? Shara Bullet would be a fun fight. I think he'd beat Shara Bullet, though, to be honest with you. And then maybe look at a Charles Barello, a Marvin Vittori, someone like that. Imavov, maybe. That would be a fun fight, I think. But yeah, Nickal definitely is on the trajectory. I'm not the biggest Nickal fan. I think people have hyped him too much, and it's nothing to do so much with him. Even though he always talks about wrestling, if this was a wrestling match, if this was a wrestling match. But honestly, 1 or 2 more fights, fighting a ranked opponent, fighting someone in the top 5. It's not too far off, to be honest with you. Okay, news on the local scene. Don Madge, one of the biggest legends and pioneers of South African MMA, has announced his retirement. He took to Instagram yesterday to say, 13 years ago to the day I made my professional MMA debut. It seems fitting that today will be the day I announce my retirement from professional MMA. What an amazing ride it has been. The ups, the downs, the amazing people I've met, the friendships I've built, the places I've seen. Wouldn't change a thing. I've given the majority of my adult life to the sport and I've never looked back. For now, though, it's time for me to say goodbye and set my eyes onto new ventures. I have an amazing family and life. MMA has done this all for me. I'm going to be chasing some new goals in my sporting life and pursuing my coaching role now within the MMA world. Thank you to my amazing wife for always believing in me and supporting me through the years, my coach for being the realest and greatest to ever do it, and for becoming like family to me. My brother, for all the years we have put in together, always having each other's backs and always pushing each other to do better. The greatest manager in the world for sticking by me and always believing in me. Wouldn't know what I'd do without this guy's support. To all my training partners and teammates over the years, and to the EFC, UFC, PFL for giving me the opportunity to do what I do. It's been epic. Much love, Madge out. Dricus du Plessis, you've achieved so many amazing things, brother. Congratulations on an absolutely incredible career. Enjoy your hard-earned retirement. And as I mentioned, Don Madge is one of the pioneers of South African mixed martial arts. I mean, he really paved the way for guys like Dricus du Plessis, Cameron Simon, and the rest to go to the UFC and to make it on the international scene. And again, he started out as a kid, basically, as 20 years old, just before, 2 days before his 20th birthday, actually, not even 21st, 20th birthday, having some tough fights, winning against Wade Groth, having some tough fights against Leon Maynard. The fight that I became a fan of him was this Costa Ioane fight, which really just an incredible performance. More tough fights, never been in an easy fight, always chucked in the deep end. Ends up going to, after a couple more fights, and winning the title at EFC, ends up making it to the UFC, who, by the way, guys, with the broken hand, ends up beating Faraz Siham, who's now 16-4. Don Madge beat this guy with the broken hand. He broke his hand in the first round and he beat this guy. And look at the run that he's been on lately. Beating Matt Frivola, Jai Herbert. I mean, he's on a 4-fight win streak now in the UFC. Don Madge dominated this guy with the broken hand. Was really unlucky in the UFC not to get a chance to continue his career. You see all these cancelled bouts over here. You guys can have a look. I did 2 podcasts with Don Madge. I've been fortunate enough to do that, where he explains this whole situation. I mean, for 2 years, he couldn't get a fight. Ends up going to PFL. Very unlucky, like getting knocked out in like the last 2.5 minutes of a fight he was dominating. Dominated this fight, getting the quick 6. And over here again, against Neiman Gracie, had to fight through injury again. So, absolute legend of the sport. And again, you guys, you see here in the UFC, achieved pretty much everything that he set out to achieve. Very unlucky that his career was hampered with injuries. Again, amazing career. I'm a huge Don Madge fan. I'm an absolute legend. He's the guy that made me fall in love with MMA on the African continent. And, much respect to Don Madge. Enjoy your retirement, man. Hopefully, we get to see you in some form of combat sports. I know you had talks of wanting to become a jiu-jitsu world champion. And I mean, you've got every chance to do that. He's amazing jiu-jitsu practitioner, amazing martial artist, amazing person. I've had the chance to meet him on multiple occasions. Such a legend, such a down-to-earth guy. And enjoy your retirement, Don. I'm sad to see you go, but thank you for the ride, man. It was an absolute pleasure watching your career and watching your fights. And all the best to you and to the family. And hopefully we see you soon in some other combat sports. Okay, so the next bit of news, Muhammad Mokaev is ducking fighters. So this is a story by Demart Penna. Demart Penna, for those of you, I'll link his Instagram in the description. He's a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt. More recently, he's another absolute legend of the local scene, and more recently overseas. You guys can go have a look. He's an absolute workhorse as well. Gym owner now at Fight City. But basically, just to give you a brief rundown, his resume, for those of you that don't know, is 15-2. This guy was like also one of the people that made me fall in love with African MMA. See, again, around the same time as Don Madge. I mean, if you look at this, he went unbeaten in South Africa, 11-0, went overseas and had his first loss after 11 years in the game. Okay, he had a layoff between, he had a 5-year layoff, but had a loss when he got to Aries, then won 3 fights in a row at Aries, had the title, defended it as well, an exhibition bout in between. Very unlucky to lose this. It was a very close fight, losing the title. Here he says, I'm an artist, I've painted in many canvases, UFC, surely I deserve to express myself inside the octagon. Now, years ago when he was in the EFC over here, he was like one of the guys that my friend and I thought would make it to the UFC. This was right about the time when they were bringing South Africans and people from the EFC into the UFC. It never happened, but, you know, I would like to see him in the UFC, honestly. But let's get to the bit about Muhammad Mokaev. So a few weeks ago, I was offered a fight against Muhammad Mokaev, which I gladly accepted. As you can see, he wants to fight in the UFC. It'd be interesting to see if that was actually supposed to happen in the UFC. But a few weeks ago, I was offered a fight against Muhammad Mokaev, which I gladly accepted. Only to find out yesterday that he refused to fight me. Get me anybody, I'm ready. Danny Rube, coach Morne Visser. So Mokaev ducked Demart Penna. That's crazy. If that's true, that is crazy. But Demart's not someone to lie, lie like that. So I honestly think that that's true. And Mokaev, if you guys recall, earlier in the year, to shock to everybody when he was abruptly cut from the UFC roster following UFC 304, despite his 7-0 record in the promotion, UFC brass showed no interest in re-signing him, leading to swift removal from the flyweight rankings. But then later, he even said that he would fight for free. This is what he said. So I said to Hunter Campbell, whatever I've done at the hotel, I'm ready to pay for that. I said in an interview, Mokaev said in an interview with MMA Junkie, and next fight in the UFC for free, whatever trouble I'm in. I think I took a big lesson. I want to come back to the UFC and hopefully I'll be back. Now, this is after the PFL wanted to sign him, but they rejected him. So now he's practically begging to get back to the UFC. 7-0 in the UFC, 4-0 in Brave. There was talk of him going back to Brave. Nothing seems to have materialized. Maybe that fight would have been in Brave. But I think this is just again a pure speculation. I think the UFC, it would have been a good fight. Have Demart and Mokaev fight each other in the UFC. I would be down for that. And you know, Demart deserves it, honestly. I mean, the guy's put in work. He's 15-2. He's not old, and he's won belts in multiple promotions, so why not? All right, so the last bit of news is that South Africa has another IMMAF world champion. This time, Kiara Fagan. She's competed a lot in grappling competitions and local competitions, but she has now been crowned the IMMAF world champion. South Africa has another world champion at IMMAF. Let's hear what she has to say before I give you my thoughts.
First South African champion since 2016. How are we feeling?
First South African champion since 2016.
Super great. I'm super excited that I was able to pull off the win. It's an overwhelming feeling. My dad has a saying, you don't get paid by the hour, so get in, get out, and that was it. It was just get in, get over as quick as I can and go for the win.
So yeah, guys, she's got quite an extensive competition history at IMMAF. I mean, she competed at IMMAF all the way back in 2022. The African Championships, didn't go to the World Championships. Then last year, ends up winning her first fight, losing the second fight. My punches, comes back this year. So after having competed at ACE, which is Demart Penna's organization, by the way, ends up winning both of her fights and being crowned the IMMAF World Champion, the first time since 2016. Congratulations to Kiara Fagan. Huge news for South African MMA. Keep an eye out for her. It'll be interesting to see where she goes once she turns pro, whether she ends up going the route of Versus, EFC. But I think she's got a bright future. Only 22 years old as well, about to turn 23. It'll be interesting to see where she goes when she starts her pro career. But yeah, a lot of potential, a lot of talent. We'll be following her career closely. And congratulations to another South African world champion at IMMAF. First one since 2016. So that wraps up your news for today. Let me know your thoughts on a potential Jon Jones, Alex Pereira, BMF belt fight. Let me know what you think about Bareknuckle's path to the title. What do you guys think about UFC 309 and Don Madge's retirement? Muhammad Mokaev potentially ducking Demar Penna, and South Africa's first IMMAF champion since 2016. As always, like the video, comment, subscribe, share it far and wide, and I'll see you for the next one. Cheers, everybody.